Hello, everyone. Welcome. Welcome to today's conversation. We're really pleased to have all of you join us today. My name is Taskeen Adam, and I'll be the facilitator for today's conversation on teacher professional development. So please note that the session is being recorded, and the recording will be shared later via our social media channels. So many of you have signed up today from a wide range of countries, and we'd really like to know where all of you are joining us from. So please use the chat function to tell us more about yourself, put your name in, your organization, and where you're joining from. While you're doing that, my colleague Jill will also put up a poll, which should appear on the screen in a session. So the question in this poll, just to get our ideas and minds in the frame of this webinar, is in one word, what is the greatest challenge to implementing effective TPD at scale, which is basically going to be the topic of discussion today. So as the poll is up there, and you can have a think about what you think is that one greatest challenge. I'll give you a quick overview of the two projects that we'll be talking about today. So the first project is from Bangladesh called 3M Power. It's led by the Open University, and it focuses on mobile learning for the empowerment of marginalized mathematics educators. And the project investigates the use of mobile learning as a potentially cost-effective way to implement TPD, and it covers research questions on equity, pedagogy, communities of practice, and student learning outcomes. And the second project is EdTech's Hub Research, investigating tech-supported school-based teacher professional development models in Tanzania. And central to this model was semi-structured communities of learning, and some of the questions that were asked were around equity, agency, and adaptation. How are we doing with the poll results? I think we'll just give it another minute. Yeah, we'll look at the chat. We have people from Zambia, Bangladesh, London, Congo, Egypt. Really lovely to see the diversity of people joining today. I hope you'll all benefit from this discussion. So I think we can, do we have enough responses, Jill? Shall we close the poll? Let's have a look. So, okay, so some of the things are resources, curriculum, funding, capacity, motivation, customization, political, well, I guess politics, practices. Yeah, so this just shows, I think we'll probably be talking about all of these today. So great, great feedback, everyone. I feel like we're all thinking about the same thing. So I don't want to waste our time. Let's move into the first session, and I'm sure we're all eager to dive into this conversation. So I'd love to introduce the speakers, and I'll introduce them all at once because we really want to keep the conversation flowing today. So the first speaker we'll have up is Professor Tom Power from the Open University. Tom is the Professor of Education, Pedagogy, and Development, and he is the Principal Investigator of the 3M Power Project. Next, we'll have Dr. Calvin Swai. He's a teacher, educator, and a researcher working at the University of Dodoma in Tanzania, and he's the co-investigator of the TPD research in Tanzania. Then we have Professor Hafiz Rahman. He is from the Institute of Education and Research at the University of Dhaka, and Hafiz has numerous publications on the impact of professional learning circles on teacher practice, and he leads the strand in the Bangladesh research. And lastly, we have Professor Sara Hennessy. She's a professor of educational dialogue and pedagogical inquiry in the Faculty of Education at the University of Cambridge. And she is a co-investigator for the Tanzania Research Program. So for today's conversation, we're skipping over the procedural bits, the research questions and the methods. You can delve in, you can jump into our reports if you want to find out more about that. What we'll be doing is jumping in straight to the juicy bits. What did we learn? How are the findings contrasted between Bangladesh and Tanzania? What are some of our recommendations? And we'll be doing this through discussions of two major challenges that as teams we kind of honed in on. So the first challenge that we'll be talking about is that relating to implementation. So specifically implementing a tech-supported TPD model at scale and what that involves in terms of all the system levels working together. So with that, I'll hand it over to Tom and I'll share my screen for him. So Tom, over to you.
Thank you, Taskeen. So I've just got 5 minutes to introduce the context and a little bit about what was being done in Bangladesh. And okay, the diagram's got some interesting arrows. The black and white arrows on there are meant to point between the different concentric circles there to show that things are moving in both directions from one circle to another, but they've gone a bit squiffy. Don't worry about that. I want to start off by talking about this right-hand diagram, and we're looking at classrooms here, and we're seeing this as a site where the teacher is learning through professional practice, doing something different in their classroom and learning from how that experience goes and how young people react to that. And young people are learning in classrooms by engaging in the pedagogic activities that the teachers are engaging them with. And the program that we're looking at in Bangladesh is called Anondigonic Shiki, which means let's make learning math fun. And Anondigonic Shiki is a blended learning program. It begins with an online professional development course that teachers can complete. Most of them have accessed that on their mobile phones in the rural areas where we were working. And it's a very large course. It's been completed by well over 120,000 teachers. And part of the reason for that is because the government asked head teachers in primary schools to encourage at least 2 teachers to complete the course from every school. And I think part of it might also be because teachers are aware that the skills in mathematics are a challenging area in the primary curriculum. And we're just going to start off thinking about young people's learning. So the National Student Assessment data suggests that less than 1 in 5 young people at the end of primary school at grade 5 were achieving the standards the government had expected, and around about 1 in 5 children in grade 5 were still working at the grade 1 and 2 levels. So you're still really working on foundation numeracy skills. And to help teachers improve, the Anondigonic Shiki course provided teachers with lots of classroom activities in numeracy to make learning math fun. And so this course was developed kind of in the wider education system away from schools. Teachers could access it online and complete the course. They could, when they completed it, they got a certificate of completion, which entitled them to attend face-to-face training, again, beyond the schools in a training centre. And teachers would go and attend an 8-day training course away from the school. And then the intention was they would come back and implement that in the classroom. Now, what our research found was that in most schools that didn't happen. In most schools, teachers got help from the school to go and attend complete the online course. Sometimes they get technical help with logging in and things like that. They might have had some financial help with paying for the cost of accessing the course. The school would release the teachers to attend the face-to-face training. But many teachers didn't put it into practice when they came back into school, and they didn't get help to put it into practice in the school. And we think this is essentially the design of the program didn't pay attention to the school part of this diagram, the middle ring of communities of practice working together within schools. And in most cases, we think something like 90% or more of schools, teachers either didn't put the program into practice at all, or they tried to put the program into practice, but their implementation was fragile because they weren't being helped to do that in the school. When we set out to find teachers who were putting it into practice, we found that there were in every upzilla teachers who were putting it into practice. But when they talked about what had happened, they almost all said, my head teacher encouraged me to do this. The other teachers in the school worked together. And so what we see is where the school community were supporting teachers to put things into practice, that's where changes happened. Teachers saw big changes themselves, and our evaluation studies saw modest but significant improvements in teaching practice and learning outcomes. So just switching to the diagram on the left very briefly, we think rather than seeing open learning, the online course as a one-off thing, the supported learning, the face-to-face as another one-off thing, and then hoping teachers will put the thing into practice back in the school, these three aspects of supported open learning need to work together. The open learning, the support for learning face-to-face, and the practical implementation need to be seen coherently as part of the same thing. Thanks, Taskeen.
Thank you so much, Tom. I actually forgot to do a little bit of a reminder earlier. So we'll be taking questions throughout the session, and there's the Q&A box. So if you have any questions as you listening in, please put that in there. And towards the end of the session, we'll be doing an audience Q&A. With that, I'll also hand it over then to Dr. Calvin Swai to introduce the Tanzania project for us. Over to you, Calvin.
Thank you, Taskeen. So I'm here to talk about our research that we are conducting in Tanzania through EdTech Hub. But before I do that, I should like to provide a context of the program itself. So MEWAKA is a Swahili word, and the English translation of that is Teachers Continuous Professional Development Program in Tanzania. So this is a landmark initiative implemented by the government of Tanzania through its two ministries, Ministry of Education, but also President's Office, Regional Administration, and Local Government. So the program started in 2022, and it introduced mainly three innovations. One of them is the integration of technology in the program. Before this program, we are not seeing the integration of technology. So the integration is through the use of technology in terms of providing teachers with government census tablets, but also the use of LMS, Learning Management System. The second innovation is about facilitation of the program itself. This program introduced the opportunity for teachers to facilitate their own professional development, very contrary to what was happening with institutions from universities, from teacher colleges, going to facilitate these opportunities. But also, another innovation has to do with promoting decentralized, school-based, and collaborative teacher professional development, which was a bit different from what was happening before, whereby teacher professional development was very much centralized. So the key components of the program itself, it has 4 main components. One of them being communities of learning, which are happening in 2 places, I can say, or 2 arrangements, where there are school-based call sessions. And these are happening in the school where we have a TCPD team, as well as peer facilitators who are now the ones who are facilitating the sessions. And teachers have the opportunity to just discuss ideas based on the classroom challenges that they're experiencing through the support of digital modules that are hosted in the LMS developed by Tanzania Institute of Education. And another arrangement for calls to happen, these are the calls happening at the cluster level at the TRC, whereby teachers from different schools around the Teacher Resource Center meet in order to discuss and find solutions to the problems that were not being able to be met in the school-based call sessions. And in these both types of calls, teachers are expected to use LMS in order for them to access the modules. Another component is coaching and mentoring, workshops, and workshops were mainly for peer facilitators in the beginning, and some teachers invited to attend these call sessions, these workshop sessions whether at the world level, district level, or regional level. Now, the important question here is about what is working and what is not working through this program. So our longitudinal study in 4 different regions, we have learned the following. We have learned that call sessions are happening in schools, but also in clusters. Teachers now have the opportunity to meet and discuss different ideas, and they can be able to channel some of the needs that you are not be able to be met in their school-based call session to the TRC level, where they have cluster-based call sessions. But also we learned that teachers now are starting to own the program compared to what was happening in the beginning, where teachers saw it as something very new to them. But now they're starting to talk about this is a program, so we are using it to be able to address the challenges that they are facing. But also we have learned that a few schools, very few schools, are using digital call modules to support their call sessions. And this is due to a number of reasons. There is issue of access of elements due to connectivity issue, but also issue related to electricity, but also issue related to digital literacy. And those are these key barriers that are facing teachers not to use calls modules as expected. But despite all of these challenges, including also the issue that mentoring and coaching is not happening at all, MEWAC has really expanded opportunities for teachers to be able to meet. Thank you, Taskeen.
Thank you so much, Calvin. So now I'll open up the conversation to everyone. Let me just stop sharing. Am I still sharing, I think? Yeah. Okay, there we go. The first question I would like to open up to the panel, and Sarah, I'll come to you first. In both of the project introductions, you both touched on your design and the implementation and the differences with it. With Bangladesh, there were almost missing components of the design at the different system levels. And in Tanzania, we had quite a comprehensive design, but some of those aren't implemented yet. So Sarah, could you tell us more about those missing components in terms of what was designed and what happened, as well as what you think are the prerequisites that need to be in place for these effective implementations to happen?
Yeah, sure. I think Calvin's introduced that already, and some of the technology obstacles were hindering the program. I think some that we could probably predict around connectivity and so on. There are some other aspects of the program that haven't yet been implemented, the coaching and mentoring as well. But I think in terms of the design, much of the design was in place, was sound, is consistent with conventional models of teacher professional development that we know are effective. So it has a really promising design, but always the proof is in the implementation. And this is where, problems can arise, sometimes through circumstances beyond somebody's control, and sometimes through not, necessarily recognizing which obstacles might be in place in that particular setting. So I think having, a really contextualized view and information data about what is in place, for example, what technology do schools have, how many are connected, how many have electricity, what are they likely to be able to access, how many teachers have smartphones. We have some of that data, but it all needs joining up and putting together with the information around the design of the TPD. So I think there's some steps where, yeah, there may be some gaps in that joining up.
Thanks, Sarah. And that alludes to a lot of monitoring and evaluation components that need to be in place to have feedback loops. Hafiz, I'll also pass to you to talk about what you think were maybe the missing elements in the design. and how that impacted the implementation in Bangladesh.
Okay, thank you, everyone. Where is the slide? I need to put my slide.
For now, we're just doing the open discussion, and I think we'll jump to your challenge in a bit
Okay, there is a
in the
question.
next.
Okay.
Yeah.
So could you tell me the question again?
So Tom explained some of the he explained the models, so the different levels of the model, and how some of those were implemented more than others, and how some components of the design didn't meet all levels at the school, at the sort of district level and the national level. So can you speak to some of the components that you feel were lacking in the model?
Okay, actually, the TPD program is based on it was a replace of a face-to-face program. So because of the COVID 2021, during that time we have a plan to give the face-to-face training, but when we were really struggling to give the face-to-face training, then our government designed this program in platform, online platform. So, and asked every teachers to complete this online course within the next 15 days. And we found within very short time, like only 15 days, we found more than 100,000 teachers have completed these courses. So it's a huge, and within the short time, it happened because of the online platform. It makes it very easier for teachers to. But when we come out to investigate whether this teacher translated this learning in their classroom practice, we found most of them are not practicing in their classroom. So this is one of the reason of the proper monitoring system that we need to be more focused on. The Tom's little bit discussed from this model. So we need to be more focused. We need to develop some more initiative. What is the reason and why we are not transforming this learning to our real practice? So teachers are learning from we found many evidence that teachers are learning, but we found very little bit teachers who are really practicing in their practice. So we call this PDP, Primary Education Development Project. So now we are designing the next phase of this program, like PDP 5, and it is the Korea time from national level to design the more focus on these issues to implement this kind of learning into real practice to make our classroom practices in different way. Thank you.
Thanks, Hafiz. Thank you so much. So you kind of both of you touched on effective practices, right? And whether they worked or not, or whether it might have been designed versus implemented. I wonder if you could touch more on that. So Calvin, maybe I'll start with you, because you also talked about the cascade models. To what extent was the model designed in an evidence-based way, and then how well was that transition to introducing those behavioral changes in the system? So here I'm thinking about, like, how did you help the system to take on new practices? And in Hafiz, you mentioned that they were sort of teaching pedagogy instead of pedagogy in practice in the classroom. So it was more about learning how to teach in a workshop or online rather than in classroom. So how can we take that shift and introduce those effective practices in? Calvin, over to you first.
Thank you, Taskeen. So as Sara also added, the design part of the program is really very good. It attended to the standards. In the beginning, it was good that the government had some support from different organizations, including the EdTech Hub. This was in terms of developing the modules, because you can have an opportunity for teachers to have the modules, but what the content of that modules. So it was good that the government received support from different organizations in order to make sure that there is a good start. But also, I remember in the beginning, the officers from different levels had to participate in the orientation program in order to make sense of what the program looked like and what the implementation part of that should also look like. But now for the teachers in schools, they didn't have this opportunity to have the orientation, to know the expectation. So it's good that now they are talking about owning the program, but in the transition was very harsh for them compared to what was happening to officers and from different levels. So I think that is also a barrier in some sense when it comes to whether the voice of the teachers was part of the discussion during the initiation of the program. Thank you, Taskeen.
Thanks, Calvin. And Tom, anything you want to chip in there about effective practice and how that can be implemented well?
Yeah, so I think one of the issues in the design of the program in Bangladesh was that the design didn't really include anything for head teachers or teachers working together within schools or between schools. And so we think there's a lot that could have been done in terms of the online learning materials, just suggesting things, signposting things like, talk to a colleague in your school and plan how you can adapt this activity for a lesson that you're both going to teach. Or, after you've taught this lesson, discuss the findings with it, discuss the experience with the colleague in your school or in another school and talk about what went well and what was difficult. So some of those kind of things of just suggesting to teachers, it's a really good idea to actually do this. We don't just want you to read about it or watch a video. We want you to try it. And it's a really good idea to prepare for that with other teachers and to share the experience of doing it with other teachers. Things like that I think would potentially have made quite a big difference. Oh, sorry, I forgot my video. There you go. Thanks, Taskeen. And I think the other thing is there wasn't really any role for a head teacher, or I noticed in the Mawaka there was kind of teacher facilitators or teacher development leads. And I think whether it was the head teacher or somebody else who took on some kind of leadership role for professional development, I think it's really helpful for the design to kind of assume that one or more people are going to be working together to help teachers put this into practice, either within a school or across a cluster of schools, as they had in Mawaka. And then thinking about, well, actually, what would those people do? How would they work? What resources and guidance could you give them that would help them understand their role? Or if you found examples for your research of people doing this really well, how can you share the stories of that so that people can say, here's 3 different ways I could have done that. That's really helpful. And there was really no kind of thought about providing that kind of support or guidance or scaffolding to people at the school level.
Thanks. So scaffolding, better content and materials in Mawaka, there were semi-structured calls, so it helped bring in the agency, but also the right level of content.
That's right.
So I think I think those are also, and I really like the ideas, like, the importance of the role of the facilitator and that sort of peer sharing as well. So with that, I would like to move on to our second challenge. And Hafiz, I'll ask you to speak first. So the second challenge we wanted to discuss today, which resonated a lot in our projects, was the extent to which these implementations could actually support the most marginalized teachers. So this is in terms of gender, rurality, disability. So let me get your slide up, Hafiz, and over to you for a quick 3 minutes presentation on some of the some of those challenges supporting the most marginalized teachers or successes too.
Okay, thank you, Taskeen. Yeah. So now I would like to discuss a little bit the implementation support for the this kind of TPD technology-based program for most marginalized teachers at the school in Bangladesh. So here, one of the surprise outcome is like though it is it's like high level of engagement. It is really surprised to us when we got the result. Like even that we work for remote teachers, but it shows that there are highest participation despite many challenges. So what are the challenges? Is like one of the is like key challenges like the data cost. The school doesn't provide any money or any allocation for this data because they are very remote, so it is even more expensive than the urban area or city area, and the internet connection is very poor, limited device. People don't have a device each person. Maybe one school has one device, and most of the cases it is not accessible for women's, and there is a huge issue for electricity. This is a big challenge for Bangladesh, and I think this is also big challenge for other part of the world, like lower medium income in countries, the same situation. The women has another big challenge of because they have to be engaged in the family work, so they have less time than the man. So, and when they prefer to who will use the device when they in the family have one devices, so the preference goes to men or even their children rather than the women. So it is the current context Bangladesh, and so even they have very limited the digital skill to handle the things properly. And despite these challenges, they many of them pay to by themselves for pay the data and help each other to solve the problem for using the TPD content in the classroom practice. And one of the another issues of teachers is like they found lack of contextual gap. Is like why the most of the cases like the course video content did not reflect their own rural context. Maybe they have to face with a different context because our especially the remote area, each of the area have different own context. That like we explore the project in Howard area. It's like in the part of the year is goes the underwater, and the hill area, the coastal area, and like the plain area. So this have a different context. So they have to face different context, but some the video is for single focus. And another challenge is like no support for disability access or inclusion design in the main program. So these are the basic some challenges when we found to implement this kind of project or TPD, technology-based TPD in the most marginalized teachers in the school in Bangladesh. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Hafiz. And Sarah, over to you for your contribution.
Thank you. If you could just, put the rest of the slide up. Thanks. Yes, I'm going to concentrate our project response on gender and disability, but I'll also say a little bit about tech. So firstly, we found that there are sort of unequal gender roles, both in school and outside. So with female teachers being given more chores and they had more caring responsibilities, meant that they not only found it harder to attend the community of learning sessions, but they also used technology less. We found that nationally, many more men access the LMS despite more women teachers, and that's statistics from the LMS way beyond our own study. Our own data showed that women were more likely to prioritize the sort of spending in the household over buying data bundles, as might be understandable. Similar to what you found in Bangladesh, we saw that female teachers also had lower confidence with technology, lower skills, lower access, less familiarity. And they reported that people who are already comfortable with technology were selected for technology training opportunities, and those happened to be men. So it was sort of self-perpetuating. Then I'll move on to disability, and we found that many disabilities were underreported. They were hidden to their head teachers, for example, to avoid stigma. For example, one teacher reported that his hearing impairment was interpreted as not listening, so teachers were reluctant to disclose their issues. And the language used by many of the participants in our study reflected a deficit view of disability. So it felt like teachers with disabilities didn't really have a voice in this, and that their needs were largely unsolicited, not addressed within the system, and there were no guidelines for addressing their needs. However, there were local adaptations that were inclusive. Peers often supported their colleagues, like reading out material or being scribes or arranging the seating accordingly and so on. And we observed those during our call observations. We also looked at chronic illness, which is rare in the literature. Most people would focus on disability rather than that, but we recognize that might also affect attendance, and indeed it did. So that meant participation in the TPD was more limited for those with chronic illness, even more so than those with disabilities. And all of those participants who reported that illness were female. There weren't any mechanisms for catching up either after people had missed calls. And then on the tech side, I think we've covered most of the issues, and these again are quite similar to the obstacles found in Bangladesh. But we also have the additional constraint that many schools and teachers were unaware of or not using the call modules because they weren't sure what the value was. They didn't know about them in some cases. The national data show that only 3% of all teachers in Tanzania actually logged into the LMS over the last 6 months. So we are supporting the government with an awareness campaign to change that situation. I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sarah. So I think my first question, and Calvin, I'll address this to you. So in both projects, there was discussions of technology and technology challenges, but in the Bangladesh case, you still had really high completion rates. So there was quite a success there. Whereas in Tanzania, even though the project tried to be low tech and offered alternatives, it still was quite a barrier. So I was wondering, like, is there a role in motivation in this? Was there some factors of motivation in Bangladesh that helped that perhaps wasn't there in Tanzania? Or for example, any examples of teacher agency that helped them to overcome these barriers? So Calvin, maybe over to you first.
Thank you, Taskeen. So that's a very good question. So in Tanzania, the program is not really meant to help to promote teachers. Maybe that can be a factor for low motivation. I mean, low engagement with the calls. Because if it was linked to having a certificate, for example, or a promotion, or just a recognition, maybe you have you are just recognized in the school or in the ward that you completed this program. It could have promoted, it would have encouraged teachers to use LMS or access the platform in order for them to have access to the call modules. But in Tanzania, that was not the case. And even now, there are some efforts to make sure that it's connected to promotion so that teachers can be motivated, but that is still in the pipeline. But I will say that teachers are using technology, but now the kind of technology that they are using there within their schools is more to do with the WhatsApp, so exchanging documents through WhatsApp, communicating through WhatsApp, and we have tried to support the government in one school to have a Raspberry Pi with preloaded call modules. The access there for the teachers is very good. They are using they can now access the modules. They are using it, and the same school they were provided with another internet support, but they are saying the Raspberry Pi is better compared to the internet, because this has to do with now connectivity issues, has to do with the low bandwidth, and those kinds of challenges in rural contexts. So I'll say that I think we can learn from Bangladesh about what it prompted many teachers to be able to complete the program, given all those kinds of challenges. And our data shows that if the government is going to make sure that the program helps teachers to be promoted, they can become very much motivated than now.
Thanks, Calvin. Tom, maybe over to you. What do you think motivated the teachers in Bangladesh, and were there any examples of agency that they took up to address their own barriers?
Yeah, I think there were lots of teacher stories that talked about the teachers being highly motivated and wanting to improve their practice. It seemed the motivation was often intrinsic. It was about teachers wanting to, to learn how to teach foundation skills more effectively to help their children learn. Those kind of intrinsic motivations were the ones that I think were most commonly reflected in the stories. In terms of teachers' agency, it's certainly not the case that teachers in Bangladesh didn't face any problems. We were really surprised that at the end of our first piece of research with the teachers, where teachers had been talking with other teachers about their experience, it seemed that they didn't talk to anybody who at the end of the conversation said, "No, I just wasn't able to do it." It seemed like everybody, or almost everybody, seemed to manage to complete the online course, which in remote rural areas was very surprising to us. But lots of them faced challenges. I think something like a quarter of them had to buy a smartphone because they didn't have one previously. Over half of them had to buy extra data to access the learning. Many teachers said things like, "Oh, there was no internet at home, or there was no internet at school, but I managed to get the internet at the market." Or when you got online, it was slow and you had to wait for ages to download a video or something like that. And it was frustrating and it was difficult. And particularly, women didn't have much time, as Hafiz was saying. But it just seemed that actually teachers told you about all these different challenges they were facing. But the end of the story wasn't, "And so I gave up." The end of the story was, "And I found some way through it and managed to overcome it, and I completed the training." And so I think teachers' agency, teachers' resilience in actually not giving up when, "Oh, I can't get online at school, therefore I'm not going to do it." They did seem very highly motivated to find ways of overcoming the challenges that were many, which they faced.
Thanks, Tom. So much to learn from this aspect of the Bangladesh project. I want to stick one more question in before we open up for Q&A, and that's around the role of inclusion of female teachers more. So both Sarah and Hafiz, both of you mentioned the challenges in that female teachers faced. What kind of recommendations do you have? How can we address this? What needs to change? Sarah,
Sorry,
over
you
to you
can
first.
start.
You go ahead and then I'll speak. Oh. Okay, sorry, I thought Hafiz was coming in. Right, I'll jump in then, and then you can follow. I think raising awareness of this amongst stakeholders at every level of the system would be the first step, because I'm not sure that awareness is there. We did do that in our small scale, research by interviewing stakeholders at sort of ward level, region level, district level, and so on, and asking them whether they knew about these disparities and what they thought about that, what they thought the reasons were, and they usually pointed to the gender roles, the gender stereotyping, the inequities that I mentioned. In terms of what to do, I think, for example, specific measures to upskill female teachers on the technology side would be helpful. Running perhaps female-only sessions where they could get to grips with the technology needed with support. So I think a recognition, but also support in place on the ground in the schools would be the first couple of steps.
Thanks, Sarah. Hafiz, would you like to add anything there?
Okay, yeah, thank you. Maybe Bangladesh could be one of the country in the world where we don't have any pre-service teacher education especially for teaching for foundation skills. This is one of the big shortcoming for our education system. So that's why we don't have good teachers because of the salary structure and the promotion issues, like the level of teachers. So it's actually the meritorious students are not promoted to teaching in Bangladesh. This is one of the big challenges. So which it created a lot of problem, like teachers with limited skills, what they need to teach in the classroom. So basically, we first need to be concentrated on to start with the teacher education program, especially teacher education, one of the main things to meet these challenges. And we need to motivate our more meritorious students for coming in the teaching workforce. So in the meantime, some other tricks when we develop some when you design or develop some module or something, we have to be keep in mind our country are not in one single plain land. Like we have different diverse like our area, hilly area. So we need to be consider these contextual issues when we
Yes.
design our content. So this is the one of the limitation in our design.
Thanks,
So we
Hafiz.
need to be focus these issues for our next primary education program. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So I'll move us on to Q&A because we've just got the last remaining 13 minutes. A lot of the different questions focus on the community of practice and the evidence. So just from Faith, there's any evidence on what makes a community of practice effective? Sarish asked, how are the calls organized and how frequently do they happen? Do you plan to capture lessons and how have these been used to improve the CPD in Tanzania? There have also been questions about the materials, how well were the call materials used? So let's talk about calls, effectiveness, how we actually design them. Let's give the nitty-gritty details to everybody. Calvin, do you want to go first from the Tanzania team?
Thank you. So the call sessions, as I said, they're happening whether in schools and then in clusters. These are the TRCs. So in schools, they're happening every week. They meet for 1 hour in a week. Across schools, they normally meet on Thursday for 1 week, and they have a peer facilitator who is going to lead the session. But in some schools, we learned that they're just selecting somebody who they think is capable of helping them to learn. So, and at the TRC level, the cluster level, calls are coordinated and led by the ward education officer. So this is the officer who is taking care of the call sessions that are happening at the cluster level of the system. And we were able to see these calls. In a call, you'll find like 9 teachers being able to meet, and we don't have many teachers in rural schools. So maybe 5 teachers, maybe 6 teachers, you find them there. They can be able to meet every week. But the challenge that they reported to us is that the collision of interruptions from other activities. For example, a visitor can come there from the education system, from the ward, from the district, and interrupt the session. So they have to skip it up to next week. But also we have teachers who are living far from the schools. So, and these call sessions are timed after working hours. So you find that it is difficult for them to be able to be there all the time. It's late evening, so some of them, they are not attending. But most of the teachers reported attending these sessions. So they have portfolio whereby they have to keep all the records of what is happening in the call sessions. And that portfolio is assessed by the school quality assurance officers who are visiting schools from time to time. But also teachers also are asked also to have their own portfolio in order to keep all the records of what is happening in the calls. Yeah, maybe Sarah, you want to add stuff?
No, I think you've covered the basics. Let's hear from the Bangladesh team.
Thank you.
Thanks. Tom, do you have anything to add on to calls? Otherwise, I have some other questions too. So maybe a quick answer.
Sorry, Taskeen, I was answering a comment in the text and I missed a question on this one. What was the question?
Actually, Tom, I'm going to take that opportunity to move to another
All right.
question. There are, again, quite a few comments that I want to know about the technologies that we use. So in a lot of the projects, we use low tech. It was designed by low tech. So I think actually, okay, so the first one was to explain a bit more about the Raspberry Pi, a single Raspberry. So this would be for Tanzania. A single Raspberry Pi unit could serve resources to how many teachers? So maybe Sarah, you could speak to that. And then there was questions about actually just talking a little bit more about what were the low tech aspects of this.
Sorry,
So
which
maybe Tom,
yeah, go on.
yeah, maybe Tom, you first talk about like what were the actual technologies used, and how was that low tech, and then Sarah, you can talk about the Raspberry Pi.
Sure. So in Bangladesh, the program was online. It was on the national e-learning platform Muktapath, and there was no kind of guidance or specification for how teachers would use that. In our data, it did seem that the vast majority of teachers used it just using a smartphone, although, as I say, around a quarter of the teachers had to buy a smartphone to be able to get online and do that, and many more had to buy access to the internet or more access to the internet so they could do it. But really, for most teachers, it was about having a smart device and having a network connection and some funding to be able to access that. I think the other kind of low tech aspect, if you like, the teachers were using their smartphones to access professional development. They didn't then need any technology at all to put the professional development into practice in the classroom. The classroom activities were no tech. They were just different ways of teaching numeracy, and you can use bottle tops for counters, or you can use these cards that you've made, or whatever it is. So the classroom resources themselves, the classroom activities, were very low resource and no tech. But we did find in the first round of research, there were quite a lot of teachers who seemed to have misunderstood that. And teachers said things like, oh, I couldn't put it into the classroom because I didn't have a laptop and a projector in my classroom. And it's like, well, you didn't need one. You just, the video was showing you something you could do that didn't require you to have a laptop and a projector. But I think I couldn't put a percentage on it, but it was a common misunderstanding, or at least it was given as a common reason for not having used the activities in the classroom initially, that the teachers didn't have any technology and they thought they needed it.
Thanks, Tom. Interestingly, that also happened in Tanzania, where it was often misunderstood as tech for teaching and not tech-supported teacher professional development.
Yeah,
and in fact, calls the communities of learning started to be designed in that way, where they were almost teaching tech, and we had to course correct to refocus on pedagogy.
Yeah.
Sarah, so some questions on the Raspberry Pi and the offline LMS. So yeah, could you tell us a bit more about how that worked and the concept, how successful an offline LMS could be?
Yes, I mean, I think the offline Moodle version hasn't yet materialized. It's not something we've been able to test. It's not yet been fully produced. We have done some small tests in our studies over the time. We have trialed Raspberry Pis. We've trialed giving teachers data bundles as well to see if that, removing the cost element was helpful. And in our small scale of small numbers of schools, that's been quite successful, but we would need to test that at scale. We do have a follow-up project, which is looking at, called Enable, which is looking at how Raspberry Pis might help as well as the role of the peer facilitator there. And I think we know they've been used very effectively in Zambia, for example, with teachers, but we've had mixed reports from the field, if you like, about the technical complexity of setting up the Raspberry Pis and of what happens when they, might malfunction or something. So I think they are quite simple devices, but there is a level of technical skill required to set them up. And even if you set them up and then disappear, you know, teachers might need some support later on. So that is an ongoing, you know, investment needed. And that is an issue. That's been an issue with the tablets that were also distributed in Tanzania to every teacher after the population census, with the idea that the Mwaka program could be accessed via the tablets. But in practice, what we've seen is most of those tablets are not being used because of issues like, you know, connectivity, but also digital skill, and teachers are just not knowing how to navigate these devices.
Thanks, Sarah. And one last question for the team. Hafiz, I'll direct this one to you. There were two questions about, so I think both projects do this, but the use of self-study modes or models. So what was the experience of the sort of self-learning rather than a community of learning? Because I think the Bangladesh project had that aspect. And how do you assess, Namrita asked, how do you assess that teachers take the self-help modules that they are learning, and particularly when it's not reflected in the classrooms? So I think this is actually for both teams, but Hafiz, you go ahead first. We only have 3 minutes left, so a quick answer.
Actually, we didn't have experience with this one sort of model, but we used community practice in many cases in Bangladesh. Like one of the big example in Bangladesh is like lesson study. We use this model since like last 2000 and early. Our specialty primary teachers are more engaged with this model. So it is not totally with the we are not involved with the online platform, but teachers have their own community practice. Even when we work with the TM Power project, it will be a little bit confused for us whether the teachers are giving data for their experience in the face-to-face community practice or from the online platform practice. So we found teachers are not well involved in these practices with the community practice, but they have this idea. This is our experience from Bangladeshi cases. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Actually, a really good question came in from Nelizwe. And she asked about how do you sustain the system? How are you going to continue this funding model, for example, over the next 10 years? Calvin, do you want to talk about the government-led motivations in Tanzania?
Thank you, Taskeen. So the sustainability of the program. So this is one of the program which is cost effective, if you will say, compared to the traditional model, and it is embedded within the system. With the schools know it. The ward education office, the district education office, they are aware of that, and school quality assurance officers, they have the task of looking into how it works. So it's the sustainability of it, I think is assured. But the question is now what teachers are doing in the schools, specifically in their classrooms, which come straight from their call session. I think that is the issue now that they have to do. So I would say the hardware part of the program looks a bit promising, but now the software, what teachers are doing inside their classrooms, in their calls, I think it's something that is need to be emphasized for so many years to come.
Thanks, Calvin. And just to chip in on that answer is that in Tanzania, this was a government-led initiative from the beginning, and the platform was developed by the government from the beginning using Moodle. So it was quite locally owned and designed from the onset. So with that, I'll wrap up here. It's been lovely chatting with all of you. We've learned so much from across the 2 different projects. So to the audience, please have a look at our reports and our websites. They've been shared in the chat. Yeah, happy to engage more. Thank you so much for your time, and hope this was insightful for all of you. Thank you.